Hillary, 29 years old, was sitting in her quiet Tucson, Arizona apartment when her phone buzzed. A text from Uncle Walter, "You need to see this." The attached video opened to a familiar scene, her parents and older brother Richard around the family dining table, Tucson sunlight streaming through the window, but the air was icy, suffocating. Her mother's voice cut like a knife. "Hillary thinks she's so great with her computer job, but she owes us her whole life for this house." Richard smirked, adding, "Yeah, useless, helps out with a little money and acts like it's a favor." Hillary gripped her phone, heart pounding, replaying it like self-inflicted torture. But what froze her solid came at the end. The camera shook, and a whispered apology slipped out. Sarah, her childhood best friend, the one she'd trusted completely. Sarah had secretly recorded it, sent it to Walter because she couldn't stomach the family's hypocrisy anymore. Tears spilled, hot on her cheeks, betrayal stabbing like 1,000 needles, not just from her family, but from the one she'd called a sister. She bit her lip until it bled, pain morphing into a wildfire of rage in her chest. "How dare they?" she whispered, voice choking. Her tear-glazed eyes now blazed with resolve. Hillary stood, walked to her desk, hands steady now. That video wasn't just evidence, it was a wake-up call. She opened her laptop, checked the Horizon Ventures LLC account, something her family didn't even know had quietly kept a roof over their heads for 5 years. A cold smile curled her lips. They'd picked the wrong person to underestimate. Hillary slammed her laptop shut, her breathing still heavy after watching the video from Uncle Walter. Her eyes, red and swollen from tears, stared into the dark screen, reflecting a face, a Hillary she'd never truly confronted before. The video, with Richard's mocking laugh and her mother's cold accusations, echoed in her mind like a dissonant song. But what hurt most wasn't just the betrayal from her family, it was Sarah, her best friend, who'd secretly recorded it all. Sarah, who'd once sat with her under the jacaranda tree in the schoolyard, swearing they'd always protect each other, had now indirectly plunged a knife into her heart. Hillary stood and stepped out onto the small balcony of her Tucson apartment. The night wind carried the desert's heat, brushing through her hair, but it couldn't calm the storm raging inside her. She asked herself, "What did I do to deserve this?" The answer didn't come from the wind, but from her memories, the years of silent sacrifice, the days she'd carried the weight of keeping her family afloat. 5 years ago, when Tucson's housing market crashed like a runaway car with no brakes, Hillary's family teetered on the edge of losing their home, the house where she'd grown up, where she'd studied under the dim kitchen light with her dad. She was only 24 then, just starting her software development career, but already successful enough to have a decent chunk of money. Meanwhile, Richard, her older brother, with his so-called business talent that her parents always bragged about, had nearly tanked the family's real estate company in just 2 short years. They turned to her, not with gratitude, but with demands. "Hillary, you have to help the family. It's your responsibility." She didn't hesitate. With guidance from Farah, a sharp financial mentor she'd met at a tech conference, Hillary set up Horizon Ventures, an LLC she kept secret to buy back the house and hold it under the guise of a bank. Each month, her family sent $600 to the Horizon account, thinking it was a standard payment, while Hillary quietly covered the remaining $6,000 to keep the loan from defaulting. In total, she'd poured over $360,000 into that house, money she could have used for a luxury downtown apartment or the round-the-world trip she'd always dreamed of. But she chose family. She chose to keep a roof over their heads, even though they'd never truly seen her as part of it. Every visit home brought biting remarks. "Tech isn't a job for girls," her mother would say, lips pursed in disdain, wearing a new gold bracelet Hillary suspected came from her dad's savings. Richard was worse, always boasting about his real work, managing the dying real estate firm, and scoffing when she shared her software successes. "Think you're better than me? Sitting there typing all day isn't a job," he'd said once, right in front of their parents, who just nodded in agreement. Hillary swallowed her anger, telling herself she did it for family, for memories of her dad teaching her to ride a bike on the Palmline Street out front or her mom hugging her when she cried over a bad grade. But now, standing on the balcony, she realized those memories were a thin veneer over a cold truth: they'd never valued her. A stronger gust of wind swept a small paper from her desk out into the night. Hillary turned back, picked it up. It was a copy of Horizon Ventures' latest transfer receipt. She stared at the $6,000 figure, then recalled Richard's words from the video, useless. A lump rose in her throat. What had she done wrong? She'd given them everything, not just money, but trust, hope that one day they'd see she wasn't a burden. Then, like lightning tearing through the dark, another memory hit, a secret she'd buried since college. She dug through an old keepsake box under her bed, hands trembling as she pulled out a stack of bank statements. There it was, proof that her dad had withdrawn $10,000 from her college savings account without a word, just to bail Richard's company out of bankruptcy. When she'd asked about the missing money, he'd looked her in the eye and said, "You spent it carelessly and forgot, huh? Don't blame me." Hillary had believed him. She'd blamed herself, picking up extra shifts at a coffee shop to cover the tuition shortfall, while Richard blew that cash on lavish parties to maintain the company's image. Now, staring at the papers, she broke down, not from sadness, but from fury. Tears hit the hardwood floor, each drop a silent accusation. She stood, wiped her face, her breathing steadying. "Enough," Hillary whispered, her voice ringing through the quiet room like a declaration of war. She hadn't just been underestimated, she'd been deceived, from the naive days she'd trusted in family to this very moment. Her hand clenched the receipt, palm sweaty. Horizon Ventures wasn't just an LLC, it was a weapon she'd unknowingly forged, and now it was time to wield it. She thought of Walter's video, Richard's laugh, her mother's fake tears demanding she repay them. A slow smile spread across her lips, cold but resolute. They didn't know the house they lived in, the dining table they sat at to mock her, all belonged to her, not out of familial loyalty, but on legal paper. Hillary stepped back to her desk, opened her laptop again, and began checking the Horizon Ventures account. She knew what lay ahead for them, and this time, she wouldn't let them drag her down a second longer. Hillary sat in the dim glow of her Tucson apartment, the laptop screen still displaying the Horizon Ventures account, proof of the 5 years she'd silently carried her family. After uncovering the secret about her college savings stolen by her dad, she thought she'd hit rock bottom in disappointment. She was wrong. The next night, her phone lit up with another message from Uncle Walter. "This isn't all, Hillary. Brace yourself." Attached was a zip file containing dozens of screenshots, messages from a family group chat she'd never been invited to, called Real Family. She clicked, her heart pounding like it might burst from her chest. The words appeared like sharp, slicing knives. Richard wrote, "Hillary thinks she's the center of the universe with her pathetic tech job. Let's make her pay more. This house is worth more than she is." Her mother replied, her tone sickeningly sweet, "She's single, no kids. What's she need money for if not to help us? I'll teach her what duty means." Her father, usually silent, chimed in, "Right, this time we push her harder." Hillary read each line, her breathing rapid, the floor tilting beneath her feet. These weren't impulsive outbursts, this was a calculated campaign, a cold-blooded plot to squeeze more out of her. She shut the laptop, stood, and walked to the window. The desert night was calm, moonlight bathing the silent cacti outside, but inside her raged a storm she couldn't contain. She thought she'd grown used to their contempt, but this group chat, the name Real Family like a slap across her face, was proof they'd never seen her as family. To them, she was just a walking ATM, a pawn in a game they'd designed. Hillary gripped the window frame, nails digging into the wood until it hurt. But the truth didn't stop there. That weekend, her mother called, voice dripping with honey, "Hillary, sweetie, come home for dinner Sunday? We all miss you so much." She agreed, not because she believed them, but because she wanted to see how far they'd take this charade. She arrived Sunday night, bringing a cheap bottle of wine as an excuse to mask the burning suspicion in her chest. Dinner began in an atmosphere so fake it was suffocating. The house, the one she'd poured thousands into saving, smelled of her mother's grilled meat, warm yellow light glowing on family photos lining the walls, but it only made Hillary feel colder. Richard sat across from her, in a crisp shirt, smirking smugly, "Good you could make it, sis. We thought you were too busy making money to remember family." Her mother set down a plate of meat, grasping Hillary's hand across the table. "You're doing so well now, honey, we're so proud." But you know, Richard's company is struggling, and the house loan's interest just spiked. Could you help out a bit more? Just $3,000 a month, not much at all. Hillary sipped her wine, its bitterness sliding down her throat, but she smiled, keeping her cool. I'll think about it, Mom. They nodded, satisfied, thinking their prey had taken the bait. But after dinner, when she excused herself to the bathroom, Hillary deliberately lingered near her father's study. The door was ajar, and the hushed voices inside stopped her cold, her blood freezing in her veins. She'll have to agree, Richard said, his tone triumphant. I hired a hacker to dig into her emails already. Found some company docs she sent to clients, enough to make her firm suspect she's stealing data. If she says no, I'll anonymously tip off her HR. Her mother chuckled softly. Good work, Richard. I'll remind her how she embarrassed us by dropping out of college. She won't dare refuse. Her father added, voice low but sharp, if it comes to it, spread a rumor she's mentally unstable. Tech companies hate scandals like that. Hillary stood there, hidden behind the door, feeling like the world was crumbling. Her hands shook, not from fear, but from a fury she'd never known, rising like molten lava. They didn't just want her money, they wanted to destroy her, to tear down the career she'd built from sleepless nights coding, from rejections before climbing to a management role. And that hacker, the thought of someone violating her private world, rifling through her emails like trash, made her want to scream right then and there. But she didn't. She took a deep breath, went to the bathroom, flushed the toilet for cover, and returned to the table with a perfect smile plastered on her face. I'm done eating, I'll head out early before it's too late, she said, her voice light as if nothing had happened. Her mother hugged her at the door, whispering, think it over, sweetie. The family's counting on you. Hillary nodded, but in her mind, a plan was taking shape, sharp and unrelenting. Driving home, with streetlights flickering faintly on her windshield, she called Walter. You were right, Uncle. They're not my family. Her voice caught, but it wasn't weak, it was the crystallization of rage and resolve. She thought of Horizon Ventures, the power she held that they didn't even suspect. They wanted to play a game of manipulation? Fine. But this time, Hillary would set the rules. She pressed the gas harder, the car speeding down the empty desert road, as if she were racing toward freedom, a freedom she'd claim for herself, no matter the cost. Hillary drove away from the family house, Tucson's streetlights flickering on her windshield like tiny sparks in the night. Her mind reeled from what she'd overheard in her father's study, Richard's plan to hire a hacker, her mother's threats, and her father's cold, steady voice ready to ruin her career. But the anger wasn't a wild, blazing fire like it had been behind that door, now it had cooled, hardening into a razor-sharp blade in her mind. She didn't cry anymore. The tears had dried on the drive back, leaving behind a new Hillary, not a victim, but a predator quietly setting her trap. As her car turned into her quiet neighborhood, she dialed Farah, her financial advisor, through her Bluetooth earpiece. Farah, I need to see you. Right now, she said, her voice even but carrying an undeniable force. Farah didn't ask questions, just replied, meet me at my office in 30 minutes. I'll have coffee ready. Farah's office was in a low-rise building, its lights spilling out like a beacon in the desert. Hillary walked in, her shoes clicking on the hardwood floor, clutching her laptop with all the secrets of Horizon Ventures. Farah, with her short, silver-streaked hair and hawk-sharp eyes, slid a mug of black coffee across the desk. What's got you looking like you want to kill someone? She asked, half joking, half serious. Hillary sat down, opened her laptop, and laid it all out, not with weakness, but with a chilling calm. She told her about Walter's video, the years she'd silently paid for the house, and now her family's plot to strangle her with her own success. Farah listened, fingers tapping lightly on the desk, then leaned back when Hillary finished. So what do you want? Forgiveness or revenge? Hillary gave a faint, humorless smile. What do you think, after everything they've done? Farah nodded, as if she'd anticipated the answer. All right. Let's look at the Horizon Ventures contract. We've got leverage. Farah pulled a file from her drawer, a copy of the mortgage agreement Hillary had signed with her family 5 years ago. She pointed to a small, italicized clause her father had likely skimmed over in his panic when signing. If a payment is late by even 1 day, Horizon Ventures can trigger the buyback clause. The house becomes the LLC's property immediately, and they turn into month-to-month tenants. Hillary stared at the text, her heart racing, not from fear, but from exhilaration. "They've got 10 days until the next payment," she said, her voice a low murmur to herself. "And this time, I won't cover the difference like always." Farah raised an eyebrow. "You sure? This is a no-going-back move." Hillary nodded, her eyes alight like a warrior heading into battle. "I've never been more sure." But the revelations didn't end there. Farah stood, crossed to a small safe in the corner, and pulled out a weathered brown envelope. "I was going to hold on to this until you were ready," she said, handing it to Hillary. Inside was a handwritten letter, the ink smudged, her mother's signature. It was a note her mother had sent Farah 3 years ago, posing as Hillary, requesting a $20,000 loan from Farah's personal account, claiming Hillary's in financial trouble. Farah had refused, recognizing the handwriting didn't match, but kept the letter as evidence. "I didn't tell you because I thought you'd forgive them," Farah explained, her voice softening. "But now I see I was wrong." Hillary read the letter, each word hammering into her chest. Her mother, the woman who'd taught her to tie her shoes, who'd sung her to sleep, had tried to scam her even as she was quietly saving them. She broke down, but it wasn't a weak cry, it was a choked sob from someone whose illusions had finally shattered. "They're not my family," she said, her voice breaking as she crumpled the letter into a tight fist. Farah rested a hand on her shoulder, not comforting, but bolstering. "Then make them your past." Hillary got home at midnight, her apartment oppressively quiet. She opened her liquor cabinet, poured a glass of whiskey, and sank onto the couch, desert moonlight slipping through the blinds to illuminate her face, a face no longer soft or yielding. She thought about the next 10 days, when her family would send their usual $600, expecting her to cover the extra $6,000, oblivious to the pit they were digging. She'd let them fail, let Horizon Ventures deliver the final blow. But she wasn't in a rush. She sipped the whiskey, its burn spreading through her mouth, and smiled, a slow, dangerous smile. She'd keep up the perfect facade, let them think everything was normal. Her mother texted, "What do you think about helping with more money?" "We're counting on you." Hillary replied, fingers gliding over the screen with eerie calm, "I'm looking into it, Mom." "You'll have an answer soon." She added a heart emoji and laughed, a dry, hollow sound echoing in the empty room. She stood and stepped onto the balcony, gazing down at Tucson's sleeping streets. The night wind blew through, carrying the scent of dust and dry grass, but this time she felt lighter. Her mother's letter lay on the table next to the empty whiskey glass. It wasn't just evidence, it was the final spark that turned Hillary from a sacrificer into a doer. She knew her family wouldn't stop, they'd keep calling, keep pretending to love her, keep threatening if she didn't bend. But they didn't know this Hillary was different. She wasn't the naive girl who believed in unconditional family anymore. She was the owner of Horizon Ventures, the one holding the house they lived in, and the one who'd make them pay for every lie. Hillary closed her eyes, breathing in the desert air, and whispered to the darkness, "They'll never see me coming." 10 days, just 10 more days, and everything would change forever. 10 days passed like a slow dream, each second heavy in Hillary's chest. After her meeting with Farah, after reading her mother's forged letter, she'd prepared everything, not just on paper, but in her mind. She maintained a calm facade, replying to her mother's saccharine texts with vague promises, letting them believe she was still the docile lamb in their grasp. But inside, Hillary was a restrained storm, waiting to break loose. On the morning of the 10th day, she sat in her Tucson apartment, early sunlight streaming through the window, casting golden streaks across the coffee table where her laptop glowed. Today was the lone deadline, the day her family would send their usual $600, unaware that this time, Horizon Ventures wouldn't receive her additional $6,000 to cover the gap. She sipped her coffee, its bitterness sliding over her lips, and waited. At 9 a.m. sharp, her phone buzzed, a bank alert. The family's payment had been rejected due to insufficient funds. Hillary smiled, a slow, icy smile. Horizon Ventures' system automatically sent a default notice to her family, and she knew it was only minutes before they'd call. The phone rang right on cue, her mother's panicked voice blaring through the speaker. "Hillary. Something's wrong. The bank says we're in default, you have to help me now." Hillary stood, stepping onto the balcony, letting the desert wind whip through her hair as her mother's pleas continued. She took a deep breath and replied, her voice steady like a still lake before a storm, "Nothing's wrong, Mom. Horizon Ventures isn't a bank. It's my LLC. And now, the house is mine." Silence stretched on the other end, as if the world had stopped breathing. Then her mother's scream erupted. "What? Are you joking? This is our house." Hillary tilted her head, gazing down at the empty street below, and continued, "Not anymore. You're month-to-month tenants now. First rent's due in 30 days. If you don't pay, I'll send an eviction notice." Richard's voice cut in, roaring through the speaker, "You do this to your own family? I'll sue you." Hillary laughed, a dry, hollow sound echoing across the quiet balcony. "Go ahead," she said. "But the contract's signed. You've already lost." She hung up before they could say more, her hand steady as stone as she blocked her mother's number. But the real confrontation was yet to come. That afternoon, she drove to the house now legally hers, with an envelope containing the tenancy notice in hand. She knocked, and when her mother opened the door, her eyes were red, her face twisted with shock and rage. "Hillary, you can't do this to me," she shrieked, grabbing at her arm. Hillary pulled away, stepping into the living room where Richard and her father stood, the air thick like before a battle. "I didn't want to do this," she said, her voice cold but firm, "but you forced me to." She set the envelope on the table, her gaze sweeping over each of them. Richard lunged forward, slamming his hand on the table. "Who do you think you are? I've got proof in your emails, I'll ruin you." Hillary tilted her head, eyeing him like a wounded animal, growling in vain. "You mean the hacker you hired?" she asked, her tone so calm it was chilling. Richard paled, stepping back. "How do you know?" Then came the twist. Hillary pulled out her phone, playing a recording Walter had sent her that morning, a final gift from the uncle who'd always had her back. Her father's voice came through, low and clear, from a conversation 2 years ago that Walter had stumbled upon and recorded. "Hillary's an easy mark, scare her a little, and she'll do anything. We've got to keep her under control, stop her from slipping away." Her mother's voice chimed in, "Right, let her think we need her, that way she'll never leave." Hillary hit pause, locking eyes with her father, eyes that once taught her to trust in family, now just an empty void. "You were wrong," she said, her voice cracking not from weakness, but from anger that had transcended all limits. "I'm not your puppet anymore." Her mother rushed forward, sobbing, "Hillary, I'm sorry, don't do this." But Hillary stepped back, her gaze hard as steel. "Sorry doesn't give back what you took from me," she said, then turned and walked out the door. As she got in her car, her phone buzzed with a flood of texts from them, begging, threatening, cursing, but she didn't read them. She drove through the desert, the sunset blazing red like blood across the horizon. She pulled over by a massive boulder, stepped out, and screamed, a primal yell that tore through the desert's stillness. That scream wasn't just release, it was a declaration that Hillary was finally free. But the story wasn't over. When she got home, an email from Farah awaited. "They just called a lawyer. I've got all the paperwork ready, they don't stand a chance." "Want to push further?" Hillary sat down, opened her laptop, and typed back, "Send the eviction notice if they don't pay rent on time. No more mercy." She hit send, then stood and poured a glass of cold water. She took a sip, the coolness spreading through her throat, as if washing away the last remnants of her past. That night, she lay in bed, desert moonlight slipping through the blinds, illuminating her face, a face no longer afraid. She thought of Walter's recording, her parents' voices admitting they saw her as a tool. It wasn't just evidence, it was the final flame that burned away every illusion she'd ever had about family. Hillary closed her eyes, her breathing steady, and for the first time in years, she slept soundly, no dreams, no guilt. They had 30 days to face their new reality, and she knew they'd never be ready for the Hillary they'd awakened. Hillary woke to the gentle dawn of Tucson, the first rays of sunlight slipping through the blinds, casting warm streaks across the wooden floor. Last night, after her scream in the desert and the firm decision to send the eviction notice through Farah, she'd slept deeply, no longer haunted by the ghosts of fake smiles in her dreams. She rose, brewed a cup of peppermint tea, its fresh scent filling the quiet apartment. Her phone lay silent, free of the frantic calls and pleading texts from her family. They were blocked now, but she knew this peace was temporary, they wouldn't give up easily. She sipped her tea, gazing out to the balcony where the desert light stretched wide, and felt something strange, relief. Not just because she'd beaten them on paper, but because she'd finally let go of the burden they'd placed on her shoulders for years. 3 weeks later, the house, now Horizon Ventures property, stood as an empty shell. Her family had moved out, not willingly, but in disgrace and chaos. Farah recounted it in a brief call. They tried to stay, but when the eviction notice hit, their lawyer gave up. The contract was airtight, no loopholes. Hillary stood in the living room, her footsteps echoing on the old hardwood. The family photos that once lined the walls were gone, replaced by faint dust outlines marking where they'd been. She stepped into the kitchen, where her mother had once grilled meat to lure her into a trap, and smiled, not the cold smile of vengeance, but the smile of someone who'd found freedom. Richard, the brilliant businessman her parents always praised, now faced consequences beyond losing the house. A week earlier, he'd sent an anonymous email to Hillary's company, accusing her of stealing data, but Farah had seen it coming. Hillary had already submitted evidence of Richard's hacker to HR, sparking a reverse investigation. The Tucson Real Estate Board opened a hearing, and Richard lost his license, his reputation crumbling to dust. Her family now crammed into a rundown apartment on the outskirts, their fake veneer of glory stripped away. But the biggest surprise came one afternoon as Hillary cleaned the house to prepare it for sale. Uncle Walter appeared at the door, holding a small wooden box, his eyes glinting with an indescribable sadness. "You need to know this before it's all over," he said, his voice low like desert wind over barren hills. He opened the box, revealing a stack of old letters, ones he'd written to Hillary's father years ago, begging him not to sell the family land to bail out Richard's company. "Your dad tricked me," Walter explained, his trembling hand pointing to the faded ink. "I gave him $50,000 to keep the land for all of us, but he funneled it to Richard and told me it was foreclosed. I didn't have the guts to fight him, but you did." Hillary met Walter's gaze, feeling like the final puzzle piece had fallen into place. She didn't cry, but her heart trembled, not from pain, but from a deep empathy for the uncle who'd suffered silently like she had. "I did what you couldn't," she said, taking his hand, and for the first time, she felt she wasn't alone. Hillary decided to sell the house. She stood in the empty living room, her fingers brushing the wall that had witnessed so many lies, and whispered, "Goodbye." The sale money didn't go into her pocket, she funneled it into a new charity fund to help women escape financial abuse from their families. She named it Phoenix, like the bird reborn from ashes, like herself. On the day she signed the final papers, she got a text from an unknown number, its tone unmistakably her mother's. "Hillary, how could you abandon me? I just wanted you to be happy." Hillary read it, chuckled softly, and deleted it without replying. That belated apology held no weight, just a desperate bid to drag her back into the old spiral. She stepped out of the lawyer's office, desert sunlight blazing on her shoulders, a rare cool breeze brushing past. That evening, she invited Walter and Farah to her apartment. They sat around her small dining table, raising glasses of red wine, the soft glow of the lamp lighting up Hillary's radiant smile. "Thank you, Uncle, and thank you, Farah," she said, her voice warm but firm. "Without you two, I don't know where I'd be." Walter lifted his glass, his eyes glistening. "You're the strongest person I've ever known. I'm proud you did the right thing, not just for yourself, but for others." Farah grinned, adding, "I just handed you the sword, you swung it yourself." They clinked glasses, the sound ringing like a song of triumph. Hillary looked out the window, where the desert moon hung in the vast black sky, and felt her heart light as a feather. Her old family, those who'd seen her as a tool, were now a distant memory. She'd chosen a new family, Walter, Farah, and herself. Hillary stood, stepping onto the balcony one last time that day, wineglass in hand. The night wind carried the breath of the desert, sweeping away the last traces of her past. She closed her eyes, smiled, and whispered to herself, "I'm free." It wasn't just the end of a fight, it was the beginning of a new Hillary, strong, confident, and unbound by anyone. Hillary's story conveys a profound message about the value of self-awareness and self-respect. For older adults, the key lesson is that it's never too late to recognize who truly values you and to bravely cut ties with toxic relationships, even if they're family. Cherish the years you have left by living for yourself, rather than making meaningless sacrifices for those who only take advantage. Hillary turned her pain into strength, founding a fund to help others, a reminder that at any age, you can still create new meaning in your life, reclaim your freedom, and find joy through your own resilience.